Welcome to the DFO Rundown Podcast with Frank Saravalli and Jason Greger on dailyfaceoff.com. Delivered by DoorDash.
Welcome to episode 148 of the DFO Rundown, the summer edition. I'm Jason Greger alongside Frank Saravalli. Today's episode is brought to you by Montana's, where all-you-can-eat Rib Fest is on from now until September 12th. You can also try their limited-time Big Grill Trio, 4 bones of their in-house smoked pork back ribs, a fire-grilled chicken breast, both sauced to your liking, and 2 grilled shrimp skewers brushed with a garlicky Cajun glaze. Find out more with the hashtag #GetMontana'sMessy. Frank, how you doing? You had a messy summer?
Not really. It's been a somewhat quiet summer. I guess messy would be the best way to describe my golf game at the moment. I am a total mess on the golf course. Some lessons, retooling everything, the swing, the grip, the stance. It's been an adventure.
What's your ultimate goal by all of this? What do you want? You just want to get better? So like, why are you
just more consistency? I've been all over the place. And so my irons have really improved. I'm hitting a lot more greens. Now, if I can take that same swing and put it in play with my driver and get that cleaned up, I'll be in pretty good shape.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, you just adding more frustration, I find. Anybody who's ever worked on their golf game, it seems to be more frustration for the first year than anything.
It drives you absolutely bananas.
See, I don't care enough I don't golf enough to. Best advice I got many years ago was with a golf pro we were playing. Is like, Gregor, you don't play enough to get mad. And at the time I didn't like it, but then like 20 minutes later, it's like, yeah. And ever since then, man, golf is way better for me. I don't get nearly as stressed because I'm like, well, I don't play enough. So what's my expectations here? So my son's actually in what's called Operation 36. They get it for kids. So you start at 25 yards and they basically got a par 9 holes, right? You got to shoot 36. And then once you get 36 or under from 25, then you move to 50. And now he's at 100 yards.
It's the best way to learn.
So him and I are, it's actually good for me because now we go play a bunch of par 3 courses. So I just work on my short game. So
love that.
I kind of like it. So it's, he's gotten into it. So it's fun. We'll go and we can bang out 9 holes we're actually golfing on Wednesday. So we'll be done in like hour and 40 minutes. It's awesome.
That's perfect. Love that.
Then we go to the outdoor pool. So, hey, that's
cannot beat it.
Now, see, I'm actually, we're recording this on Tuesday. I'm going to West Edmonton Mall. There's a huge water park. I don't know if you've ever
I've seen it. I have, yes.
Oh, dude. Like, I'm a water slide guy. I love it. These water slides are epic. I'm taking my 8-year-old and his good buddy to the water park. And it's like the easiest Father Day ever because I get to go on all the rides. I love it.
So answer me this. As Jason Greger is in the water park at the West Ed Mall, are you tarp off or no? Or are you wearing a swim shirt?
A swim shirt? No, I don't own a swim shirt. No, buddy. You know what? I'm looking good right now. I take my tarp off. Trust me, there's no embarrassment right now. I have a big goal that I wanted to reach by October.
What is it?
So my goal is, so for most guys, they say that disease we're much more susceptible to disease when you got extra weight around your belly button and your navel, your gut area. And so they say a really good base measurement is whatever your height is in inches. So me, I'm 6 feet tall, so 72 inches. If you're 72 inches, around your belly button should be half, so 36. And I'm in pretty good shape. And I measured mine a few months ago, and I was 38 and 3/4. So I was like, what the? So now I'm down to just over 37, like 37 1/8. And so I got 1 1/8 inches to go by October. I want to get to 36. So
nice. That's a very specific goal. I like that.
Yes, very specific, and it's easy to measure, right? Because you can see it.
Quite literally.
So I'm doing a lot of workouts, and honestly, so by doing all that, like, you know, my upper body looks better. And the other thing was I wanted to get that teardrop back above my knee. I haven't had it since I was like 25. So I've been doing a lot of leg stuff, and it's coming. I can almost see it. So it's nice.
Attaboy. It's Tuesday. I am heading to Italy tonight, and I'll be there for 2 weeks with my family, and I will not be watching what I'm eating. Not that I ever do.
Oh, it's Italy.
But I do have a commitment that when I get back and in September, the month before the regular season opens, I am going to be crushing it. So I don't have a specific goal yet, but in light of this, I will make one.
Yeah, I get a goal because for me, like I didn't want to do weight because I could lose weight, but if I'm getting muscle, so to me, it's all about inches. So that was my.
I like that. It's always all
actually,
about inches.
yeah, and so that's what she said. So we will we'll go from there. I'm looking. It's been the good news is I can see progress. So as I see progress, it's and really the last inch, a lot of it's diet, and so I don't diet. I just eat healthy. So I've cut out a lot of my sweet tooth, and the first 2 weeks was brutal. Like sugar addiction's the worst. And now that I've gotten over it, I don't, I can drive by the bulk barn and not have to turn in to buy some candy. So it's nice.
You're a candy guy, huh?
Oh, dude, I'm the worst.
So are you gummy candy, hard candy? What do you like?
I like chocolate covered blueberries or raisins. Love it. And then dinosaurs and sour jubes. I could eat those all day.
Okay, so this is a controversial take on my part and may need to break out the hot take mitt. Canada has awful candy. The whole country. Like? Just every time I go there, I'm like, the candy here is so disappointing.
Well, it depends. What are you looking for? What candy do you have in the US?
I'm a big gummy candy guy. So like Sour Patch Kids would be my go-to. And I know that you can find them, but like stuff like that, Mike and Ike, like you guys don't have any of the really good gummy candy.
Oh, we have Mike and Ike and Sour Patch Kids. They're in like every drugstore around.
Yeah, but
you gotta look harder, Frank.
Your selection is bad.
Oh, wow. See, it's funny. Like, I don't really like gummies. I like jubes and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not a huge like gummy guy. And unless it's like Mike and Ike to me is not a gummy. I grew up on Mike and Ike. I love those. But like hot tamales.
Yeah, hot tamales are good.
Yeah. I've kind of that was like more kid stuff. Now I'm more an adult sweet tooth. So
oh yeah, the chocolate covered blueberries. That'll
chocolate
get you
covered blueberries, buddy. That's it.
Yeah.
Hey, I made the mistake once in LA on Rodeo Drive of going into a candy store and buying. I said, yeah, I'll take some of those. And the bag, like literally, it might have been 50 total. It was $28. And I was pot committed because I was at the till. And my buddy's standing beside me laughing. And she goes, do you want any? He's like, no, I'm good. And so that's like a running gag now. Cause I've never been more like, are you joking right now? It was the biggest ripoff I've ever had in my entire life. $28 for like 50 little chocolate covered blueberries. And they weren't even good. God, still bugs me.
Yeah, I was gonna say that $28.
Hey, buddy, it was the principle, man. It's the principle. Yeah. Jeez, you know how many bags of like you can buy a massive bag of Costco of chocolate covered blueberries that are infinitely better than those, and it's like $10 for a massive like 3-pound bag.
I don't know. I've wasted way more money on dumb shit.
Oh yeah, well, late night buying on TV. Don't do that, Frank. Don't do that.
No, that's not my thing either.
Now, speaking of big money. Since we've talked, Jonathan Huberdeau got big money from the Calgary Flames, 10.5 million. The cap hit, Frank, doesn't surprise me. The guy scored 115 points. You know, he's fifth in Hart voting. You're going to get paid. I'm a little surprised of the structure of the deal from a Calgary Flame perspective.
The structure in terms of the signing bonus and
yeah, like it's 10.5
no
every year. Like a lot of contracts, guys will get more money in the first few years, right? And a little bit less later on. And there's none of that here.
Yeah, I don't know that. Does it matter? I mean,
well, you can't buy it out at all, right?
Like, well, that's by nature of the signing bonus. It's not so much the variability year to year. The signing bonus locks him in, you know, pretty much makes it buyout proof.
No, I understand that. But even if you would have paid him like, 14 mil in total money the first few years and it goes down progressively, then the player gets the majority of his money anyway if they're concerned about a buyout. Because let's say hypothetically, the last 2 years of the deal, he was getting 4 mil in straight cash, let's just say. And then they're like, well, we're going to get bought out. Well, you get bought out for 2.6. He'd get signed by another team at 1.5. He'd still get all his money.
Yeah, I can tell you this. I doubt they were thinking very much about his buyout. And I can tell you that when I look at Jonathan Huberdeau and his game, I think he's going to be a very productive player to late in his game, 38 and 40. Okay. And I think the reason for that is he's never been someone that's known as someone that's super fast, right? It's not like there's going to be this huge drop off in his skating that is going to get in the way of him being a productive player. His hockey IQ is high. He's always been a talented playmaker. And I think as we've seen over the last number of years, his game has just gone on an upward trajectory to the point where he was now in the Hart Trophy conversation this year. I think what gets really interesting from a Calgary Flames perspective, and, fans may chirp at that, 8-year term. First off, you needed someone to commit to your team and your city long-term. So the Flames got that in Huberdeau, which was super important coming off the summer that they had. And on top of that, he keeps your team right in your competitive window now for the next number of years. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, because of the additions that they also made on defense, if they can get one more really solid player and take advantage of the, this final year that Huberdeau has on his current contract at $5.9 million, I think if you can get someone like a Nazem Kadri on your team, that the Flames would be better next year than they were the past year. Buying or selling that?
Well, if you get Kadri, so it'd be Kadri, Huberdeau, and Weegar for Gaudreau and Tkachuk, basically, is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Well, I guess Gabranson was a regular, so those three in, those three out. Now, I'm looking at the Flames cap situation.
They'd have to move someone.
Yeah, they'd have to move someone.
You can move one of your defensemen, I would imagine. All those guys in the $2 to $4 or $5 million range.
Potentially, yeah. Like they have, their defense depth is excellent. Calgary's defense depth. They were also one of only 3 teams to have 6 D-men play 70+ games last year, which is kind of crazy. So we'll see if they could be healthy. So,
1 to 6 though. How many teams are better in the 5 and 6 hole than Calgary?
Yeah, I like their defense a lot. I don't know. They don't have a number 1 defenseman, but they got a lot of good defensemen.
Mm-hmm. They've got a lot of number 3s. Is that fair?
I think there's a few guys that would that could be number. I think Mackenzie Weegar's a 2. Yeah. Like Noah Hannafin's I think Noah Hannafin's
he had a really good year.
Yeah, really good. And Chris Tanev, for what he does, Frank, his ability to just be a defensive defenseman who can move the puck admirably. He's so good defensively. I think sometimes he gets overlooked.
So let me clarify that for a second. Because I realize that when I say they have a lot of number 3s, that people might find that offensive. I think that all 6 of their guys average out to a 3, which is a lot more than you could say about other teams. Because there's usually they start higher, but the drop off is so big that really they're paying their guys that are in the 1 and 2 slots so much that the guys that are their 5, 6, 7 are really not very good.
Yeah. Tampa Bay's defense, even though they lost McDonough, it's still pretty good.
But you're talking maybe 3, 4, 5 teams in the league that could be in that conversation. I think Calgary is one of them.
Yeah. No. Well, defense wasn't an issue in Calgary last year. They have the 3rd best goals against in the NHL last year. They're really good. Now, speaking of Huberdeau's contract, we'll have the GM who traded him, Bill Zito, joining us today on the rundown. We are now into, we're almost 10 days into August, Frank, and Nazem Kadri, you mentioned him. He doesn't have a contract. What's up with Kadri?
So my understanding is they've continued to engage with other teams. For all the reports that Nazem Kadri has something locked up with the New York Islanders, I think that's premature to say. I do think the Islanders have been one of the teams that's been in conversation with Kadri. I think they've put an offer on the table. Other teams have told me they believe it's in the 7x7 range for Kadri. And at this point, obviously it's not signed. And the fact that they continue to talk to other teams tells me at least that they also haven't agreed to terms with the New York Islanders. So may he end up there? It's certainly possible, but they also need to move money in order to make it work. I would imagine Noah Dobson coming off a 50-point season, if you want to sign him to a long-term deal, which I think would make sense, he's probably going to chew up $6-7 million on your cap. When you look at, paying Romanov, he needs a new deal. These guys are going to be, somewhat expensive. So how does that all work out? Who are you moving? The speculation, if the Islanders do end up making a move, has consistently been around either Josh Bailey or Josh Bailey or Anthony Beauvillier. I was looking at the wrong name on my list. And so what do the Islanders do? I mean, that's up for discussion. I think the Calgary Flames are one of the teams that's been interested. I think a number of others have been poking around of late to try and figure out what's going on with Kadri.
And, there's still like other quality players. Phil Kessel had 50 points last year. Evan Rodrigues is a solid player, Frank. Like, man,
Sonny
when you
Milano, there's talent out there.
You look at the lack of cap space around the league. I just think there's a lot of guys that are going to be getting squeezed here significantly more than they thought they would on July 13th.
Totally agree. And I think Phil Kessel's probably a prime example of that, like someone that clearly has talent, has sort of hit the age curve, not so graciously, but still had 51, 52 points, whatever it was last year for an Arizona Coyotes team that struggled for the large bulk of the year. Everyone thinks of Phil Kessel and they think of him as a goal scorer. What did he end up with? 8 goals. That makes it tough, but someone out there is going to get Phil Kessel on a value deal at 1 year, $1 million or $2 million because the guy loves to play. So he's going to want an opportunity somewhere. My guess is where he has a chance to win again, try and get that 3rd Stanley Cup, and someone's going to give him a shot, I would imagine. I'm not as convinced with some other players that are out there.
Well, there's going to be probably few guys, Frank, on PTOs like we usually see, but maybe even more this year.
I agree, but PTOs often turn out to be some of the best stories.
Oh, 100%. You get guys at bargain deals and they come in, they're super hungry. They gotta prove themselves all over again in kind of a weird way. And I also wonder, like, there's still some young players on teams across the league, guys who don't have ARB rights, who are RFAs, who are likely going to have to sign for $900,000 to $1 million. And, they thought they might get 1.3 or 4. And I know people say, well, that's still like a 33%, decrease from what you thought you might get at the start of the summer. It's just, there's very little money around. And, the Kadri contract is interesting, Frank, as you mentioned, 7x7 for anybody to make that deal happen. You likely, if it's a competitive team, they got to make a trade.
Yeah, and I think Colorado's still been in the mix, but they're offering a lot less term, my understanding. I think they're somewhere in the $4 million range. I think they're somewhere around 4 times 6. 7 times 7 is obviously a big difference.
Yeah.
Is someone willing to go in between on term and maybe give a slightly higher AAV in order to make it happen? I don't know. But Kadri's, he's not alone. Like, there's like Paul Stastny is out there. And he's sort of waiting, I think, on what happens with Kadri, at least in terms of the Avalanche. Some really good players, like Tyler Mott's out there still. I mentioned Sonny Milano. You mentioned Evan Rodrigues. There's a whole group of guys out there that, as we get into August 9th, it's sort of been unprecedented in the way that this has played out, really in the way that it's lingered on.
Yes, it is unique for sure. Like a guy like Evan Rodrigues to me right now, Frank, kind of reminds me of Patrick Maroon. In the set, remember when Patrick Maroon was a free agent coming out of New Jersey, and people thought he was going to get $3 million, and ended up at the end having to sign for like less than $1 million in hometown St. Louis. And like Evan Rodrigues had 19 goals and 43 points. It's very similar numbers to what Maroon had that year, and ended up not getting close to it. So there's a PK Subban. I know that he's working with Adam Oates as a skills coach. He's really working on kind of fine tuning some of the areas of his game, and he's a guy like, he's made over $80 million, right? He doesn't need money. And in PK Subban, there's a guy that, would be happy to sign for low, like, a Corey Perry type of player, right? A guy who made big money, and then he'll sign for $1 million or $1.5 million or something. And right shot defenseman, Frank, as we know, there's not enough of them around the league. So I think somebody will give him. Pardon? You
think someone will sign him?
I do.
I honestly don't know, because I truly believe, and the cap hit obviously was an issue last year, at $9 million, but I don't think the New Jersey Devils got one call on PK Subban last year at the deadline. Not one.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me. At $9 million,
but someone could have chopped it twice and got him into the $2 million range.
Yeah,
and no one was willing to make it happen.
Yeah. No, you know what? I could see him, Frank. He might sign for less than $1 million. Honestly, I don't. I think he's a player that just is going to want to get back in the league. And I think, veteran right defenseman, he'll get signed. Another guy who could be a sneaky quality signing is Johan Larsson, right? Doesn't cost you very much. I think Johan Larsson's a very just solid player.
I agree. There was a report that came out on free agent day that said that the Pittsburgh Penguins and Johan Larsson had a deal. I do not believe that to be the case. Everyone's sort of been wondering what's happening with Johan Larsson. To my knowledge, still very much a free agent.
Yeah, another guy, because of how he plays, Zach Aston-Reese, he'll get a contract somewhere, Frank. Just,
I think his
aggressive
preference
forwards
is New
who can
Jersey.
skate. Yeah, guys who can skate. You mentioned Tyler Mott, pretty good penalty killer. I'm a little surprised. Like, I think some guys are still, their asking point. I keep talking to some people in management that asking prices will just have to come down the closer you get to camp. There's no other option.
Yeah. More surprising signing for you in the last few days, Nicolas Waugh, 5 years times $3 million, or Lawson Krause, 5 years times 4.3.
Well, I'll take Krause because a player committed long-term to Arizona. I think that's one that organization looks at and is like, hey, you know what? Here's somebody who believes in us. We're going to pay him. They got boatloads of cap space. Krause had a pretty good season, right?
He did. Can he duplicate it?
I think he could score 20 goals again. Yeah. Like, it wasn't like
like he's got to do that pretty consistently all the way through this contract in order to make it work. And he's got 346 games under his belt, and to this point has averaged way less than 20.
Yeah. Well, I look at Krause, two things, Frank. The roster today, how many guys are going to play that many minutes ahead of him, right? So that to me is the big one, right? Like, he obviously 2 years ago he was terrible. What do you have? 4 goals, right? He didn't fit in Toronto, but he had 15 and 66 the year before that, and this year he scored 20 goals in 65 games. He'll come in around probably 16 to 22, give or take. He's not going to put up a huge amount of points because they don't score a lot overall in Arizona, but there's just not many guys ahead of him on the depth chart. He's going to get ample opportunity.
Well, his career average is 0.16 goals per game. And like I said, 346 games is a pretty healthy sample size. 82 games times 0.16 is 13 goals per season. 4.3 sounds like a huge bet.
Yeah. Well, I don't disagree that it's a big bet. I think it's an organization that wanted him to commit to them. I think they need, you talked earlier about Calgary needing someone to commit to them. I think there's a little bit of this in Arizona, no question, right? They're entering their phase of they're going into their, I don't know, do we call it like a rented building? It's not a new building. It's new technically. It's not.
They are the tenants.
Yes. So they're rented building for the next few
years. By the way, it seems like they sold out a couple ticket categories. I was reading up on, what's happening there. I saw the seating chart out there. The ticket prices are really high because, at least for Arizona, because it's a small building, and they've actually sold out a few categories, which I thought was interesting.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. I think it's just simple supply and demand. And you look, when certain visiting teams come to town, Frank, like, those games are going to sell out. Like, it's not necessarily going to be Coyotes fans. It's going to be opposing fan bases that come in there. That's always had, like, Detroit, when they come to town, I know they only come to town once. That building's jammed with Detroit fans. Toronto, Montreal, a lot of Edmonton and Calgary fans go to Arizona in the winter, right? Now, looking at their schedule, it's a little odd because Edmonton doesn't play there until March. But usually a lot of visiting teams in Arizona eat up a fair amount of chunk of tickets, and I don't expect that to change.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I'm considering going there on opening night whenever they finally get there in mid to late October, just to see what it's like.
Oh, 100%, man. Like, I understand the optics of people saying it's a 5,000 seat facility. That's not an NHL size facility. And that's valid. It's 100% valid. But when you look at the atmosphere most nights on how the games were in Arizona, I think most nights this is going to be close to capacity. And when I've been to smaller rinks, Frank, 5,000, 7,000 seats, when it's sold out, it feels as loud as a 17,000 seat stadium that's sold out, right? There's just a different energy when the building's sold out, regardless of size.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm here for the chaos of it. I also think that there are a ton of players that have serious concerns, and the NHL Players Association has serious concerns about hosting an NHL team in that arena for a while. Like, we're no closer to having shovels in the ground or steel in the ground in Arizona. And I know with the weather there, you can build an arena quite quickly, but there's a lot of red tape, a lot to cut through to get to that point. And until that happens, like, I'll believe it when I see it. And if you're looking at 4 years, probably as a minimum right now, that's a long time for a temporary facility that's not up to NHL standards. It just is. And I can tell you that the NHLPA and the players themselves are not happy.
Oh, I totally get that. That's valid. It makes a lot of sense, and it'll be something to watch for sure. It's, it's like a precedent that they don't want to set. Although when I look at teams around the league, to me, Arizona's just in a different category. I don't see any other market that's going to run into a situation like this moving forward. I can totally understand the concerns from the NHLPA for sure. But and speaking of the NHLPA, Frank, I haven't been able to get an answer as to why they didn't grieve the Duncan Keith. There's $3.4 million that should be available to the PA that's not, right? He retired. Chicago plays the recapture penalty, right? So that's hurting them. And the whole reason that was put in place to get that benefit was for the PA, for more player money. And I'm surprised that they haven't done anything.
Yeah, I haven't followed up on that. I've seen some tweets on social media, and I understand what the complaint is, that if the Chicago Blackhawks are getting hit with a recapture penalty, then that means that the Edmonton Oilers should be getting a cap benefit, because if you think about it, the reason the cap recapture penalty existed was to penalize teams that paid the player more in salary than they earned on the cap. Now, the inverse should be true for the Oilers, because they paid him less than what they were charged on the cap. And so they should now get the difference on their cap moving forward. But I was told a while back, and hadn't checked on it, that the Oilers had known this from the beginning when they made the trade with the Blackhawks, that they would not be getting it.
Yeah, and I understand that the NHL said that. But
why did they say that? That's what I want to know.
Why did they say it? And number two, why would the NHLPA agree to it? It's in the CBA. Why would you suddenly, this doesn't benefit your members at all? I don't understand it like that. And I can't get a clear answer from it. Like, I'm a little surprised by it, because usually the NHLPA, like any little change, Frank, to the CBA, they're like, whoa, we don't want this. But this one's just kind of, now maybe because they're like, well, it's really only going to benefit one team. But the whole purpose.
That's besides the point.
Yeah, it's beside the point, because the whole purpose is of having that extra money in the player pool, ultimately, right?
That's however many more dollars that can be spent by the Oilers to pay NHL players.
Yes. So it is a surprising one that the NHLPA hasn't done anything about it. So now I know that
I'll check in on that one and report back for next week.
Yeah, because I haven't been able to get a clear answer from them, which is a little surprising. But now I understand also that, Frank, this type of thing really is not going to occur again. There's not many of these contracts left, right? Mm. So that's a big reason why, maybe, but still.
All those guys have gone by the wayside.
Yeah, right? Like, I think Sidney Crosby, is he the last one on those, like a 12-year? I think he might be.
He's one of them. And I know that there's been consternation about the Sidney Crosby contract from the Crosby camp. They had wanted to see if they could renegotiate that deal, because I think the truth is they didn't think that he would make it to this point. If you look at his deal, he has just $9 million coming to him over the last 3 years of the deal. It's 3 times 3. And that's a huge drop off from what Sidney Crosby is used to earning.
Oh, yeah. And he's still one of the big faces of the game. So,
and one of the best players in the game.
Yeah, I don't, but unless they're going to change a rule, Frank, I don't think
they ain't changing the rule. I can tell you this. I can tell you that they asked and the league more or less laughed.
Yeah. Well, they don't want to set that precedent for sure. I totally
No
get
chance you can renegotiate.
No, good. Hey, let's get to our big guest interview today. It's brought to you by the 2022 IIHF World Juniors. What better way to cool off into the rink during the first ever Summer World Juniors? Single game tickets for the tournament are now on sale, starting at only $40. Grab your sunglasses. The brightest stars in the junior game are in Edmonton.
Our next guest was born in Western Pennsylvania, raised in Wisconsin, played hockey at Yale, became a lawyer after that, worked in corporate America in law firms, and then was a hockey agent for a number of years before joining the Columbus Blue Jackets as an assistant general manager. He is now the general manager of the Florida Panthers. The DFO Rundown is pleased to welcome Bill Zito to the podcast. Bill, how you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me. Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, great to connect with you. And so let's start here. You were at the helm of a 122-point team last season that set the salary cap era record for goals scored in a single season. And yet we've got a lot of changes. You've got a new head coach in Paul Maurice. You traded away the guy in Jonathan Huberdeau, who has a lot of your franchise records in terms of scoring. I guess the big question fans want to know is, Bill, why? What are you thinking? What's your thought process?
Well, in Paul Maurice, I think we have a special person. If you've ever interacted with him, as we did, he's a guy. I think I used actually both he and Matthew. Checks all the boxes. And when you interact with him and you talk to him, and you feel his passion for the game, his experience, his technical expertise, his human expertise, he just is a right fit. I'm so excited to be moving forward with him. And on the player side, so many factors go into decisions. It could be a little bit of today, a little bit of tomorrow, a little bit of next week, next year, next several years, salary cap, maybe missing elements to what you have. Maybe you have a little more over here, a little less of this, a little less of that. So there's a lot of factors that go into these things.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Matthew Tkachuk coming in, signed to a long-term extension as well, 8 years, locked up through the prime of his career in South Florida. He's mentioned how excited he is. We've called him a unicorn on this podcast, Bill. What does Matthew Tkachuk bring to the table? How different does your team look? And was that maybe an element you thought what he brings maybe a little bit missing from your team as you went through the playoffs last year?
The unicorn label is very convenient for me because it's sort of that catch-all for a unique entity, right? That there's not a lot of, and at the same time, it's when you apply all those adjectives as part of that unicorn label, it is pretty accurate, right? When you take what I think you could in many instances characterize him as a size strength forward who brings a physical element to the game and some grit, some passion. And then say, well, he's a 100+ point guy. There's just not a lot of that out there. And then he's 24 years old. I don't want to beat up this checking boxes analogy, but you keep adding on. And so I think that unicorn label is certainly applicable.
Bill, you look at this trade, and in the history of the game, we just don't see trades that involve 100-point guys very often. Can you kind of give us a little bit of insight into how it came about, Bill, and how exciting / nerve-wracking is it as a GM, when you're involved in one of the biggest hockey trades we've seen in decades?
It happened rather quickly. It was something that came up. I think I had said at some point in a press conference or in an interview that, at first you're like, I'll go back to Frank to your unicorn moniker. You're not really sure. Is the unicorn available? That type of thing. And I don't know that it really dawned on anybody. You'd have to speak to trees, but it didn't seem like it was a trade of the century or type of thing that you're referencing. It was more, we have a salary cap. We have a COVID-related situation with regard to a flat cap now for a few years. It's going to open up later on, and we have lots of decisions to make personnel-wise. And we had, trying to think of the right word here. a better word for makeup, the consistency, the totality of our team, where you had a skill set with some additional attributes that come in that yeah, I do think they certainly enhance our group, and we're really excited for that.
You mentioned the totality of your group, and we've seen teams that are very good and they feel like there's just one or two ingredients missing. You know, you go back to Tampa Bay, one of your biggest rivals, when they basically said, hey, you know what, we got to get grittier. They went out and got Coleman and those guys, and they kept their top end skill guys. You get a unique player because he's skilled and gritty. Did you feel your team come playoff time? Did you need an extra maybe jerk mentality as well as physical mentality?
You know, that's a question that we debate here every day. I'm not sure it's as easily discernible as that. We need this.
Okay.
But could you look at certain instances or parts of those games and say, well, we could have used a little grit here? Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm quite sure we could have looked at some of the games and said, well, in game 4, which I thought was a pretty complete game on our part, and Vasi was just unreal, could we have used more goal scoring? How about any, right? So it's a little bit of a balance, but I think that, you know, I know that this combination, this package of skill, scoring, grit, speed, energy, and the personality too, right? Matthew seems to be the guy who, maybe I'm going to regret it, but I use that analogy because I just watched the movie, Jimmy at the end of Hoosiers.
Okay, yeah.
I'll make it. And there's a lot to be said for that. So,
Bill, I just ran through your resume to start. You've been around the game a long time. You've now had a few years now in the chair. What have you learned about yourself as general manager and going through the process and building a team? We talked about some of the changes that you've made this summer, but you also made some really significant moves at the trade deadline, and went for it. And I think a lot of people admire that. What have you learned about the process?
wow. How long do we have?
Unlimited. That's the best part of podcasts.
No, we're limited. I guess the biggest two things. One, the simple one is just how important it is to be organized. That the organization, if you're not, or when I find myself slipping and getting a little bit disheveled, or I've got to take care of this, or I've got to take care of that, it's hard to play catch up. It's almost like a hockey game, right? If you're a little bit out of sorts and maybe you go down a couple, it's tough to get back into it. So that staying organized and staying focused on and moving forward day to day in whatever operation you're dealing with, whether it's scouting, the NHL club, the minor league club, budget, whatever it is. So it's the organization is one thing. And then I used to give Rick Dudley a hard time, and Rick is a trusted and valued member of our staff. When he was a GM, and he would react so emotionally to wins and losses, particularly the losses. I was an agent, and I would tease him a little bit and say, Rick, you know, it's December, and you're going to lose again. You know, you probably get over this. And I didn't appreciate how high the wins are and how low the losses are. And trying to keep that balanced, not only for your own sanity, but for everybody else, I think is paramount. And then I guess a third thing that I would add is culturally how important it is to ask why. Whatever it is we're doing, why are we doing that? And if the answer isn't because of A, B, C, and that makes a lot of sense, well, then you can examine it and re-examine it and maybe come up with a better way to do things.
It's interesting, the why question, because I've wondered this just thinking about how teams are built. And I always ask myself, why are NHL GMs so risk averse by nature? You see the changes that are made year over year from teams. You see teams that had a lot less success than the Florida Panthers had last season, and they're rolling back much of the same group. You're willing to make changes. You were willing to make changes at the trade deadline. Do you think that's part of your own nature, in the sense that, just how you view things may be a little bit different in terms of your risk tolerance? How do you assess that as a general manager?
I can't speak for others. I would say that you probably have to have the luxury when you're when you're doing a risk analysis on someone else's behavior, of making sure that you can appreciate all of the data or information they have, good or bad. What they feel the information they have is through their prism, through their information stream. So that which you may think is risky, to that individual may not be, but you're not privy to all the information they have. I have a house that's a $50 million house. I'm selling it, and I sold it for 25 million. Okay, wow. Well, it had termites, or it's on a floodplain, or the neighbor's house has termites, and it's just a matter of time. These are bad examples, but you know what I'm saying is that's one thing. And I guess, every situation you look at the cost benefit on that risk analysis and say, is it worth it? Can I recover? Worst case, can I recover from it? What is the true value? And yeah, that's my answer.
Bill, for a lot of people maybe who don't get to see the Panthers every day, what impressed you most about Anton Lundell, and what are you excited most about his potential future?
On hockey wise, his sense is considerable. His skill level is a little higher, I think, than most people think, but his hockey sense is high end. You can, as support or evidence to support that, I will point out that he was on our top penalty killing unit as a rookie. You have to have some pretty significant understanding of the game and instincts to be able to do that. Off the ice, he's mature beyond his years. And I think that's an overused statement, or it's a frequently used statement. In this instance, it's spot on. He's very mature. He's very driven, wants to get better every day, wants to learn every day. And it will not be satisfied with status quo. Will keep pushing himself and others to be better.
You mentioned the flat cap, and it's such a highly competitive time now. Every dollar and cent can make a big difference. But ultimately, when you look at winning organizations, they talk about culture, and some people try to downplay it, Bill, from the outside. I'm one who's a strong believer in successful organizations have a good culture. Can you talk about what you feel culture means to you, and how it's always evolving and massaging it to have it become one that you feel is a winning culture?
I appreciate the difference between what might be perceived as a successful organization and a winning organization, because it seems like you have to cross the river Hades to get there. And we want a playoff run. That's about it, right? We need to improve. We need to get better. And so if we had to apply just one label to the culture, perhaps it's that characteristic that I just referenced of Lundell. It would be a collective sharing of at least one notion that, how can I get better every day, and how can the group get better every day? That's maybe it. And it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. In my experience, it doesn't stop in the last minute of the Stanley Cup winning game. The guys, they can't help themselves. That's just how the team is, and how collectively and individually it's the same.
Bill, I wanted to dive a little bit into your background. We mentioned your path as an agent before you joined the Columbus Blue Jackets, almost 20 years. Did you I didn't know this, and I probably should have asked before we did the pod. Did you actually live overseas for a time when you were an agent?
When I got out of college, I played like in a series of European leagugues. Let's just say they weren't scouted. Right?
Okay.
It was a great. So
you had a good time.
I have a lot of experience with cultural experience. But I had ended up sneaking into Finland and playing in a town called Salo in a lower league, a lower division there, which was a little bit more of a legitimate hockey. But the guys all still had jobs. Maybe two guys on our team didn't have jobs. I made $100 a week. I don't know what it was. But then when we started the agency and I partnered up with Marcus Leto, practically speaking, at that time, this was like 95 to 2000, Helsinki had 3 pro teams, right? You have Espoo, Jokerit, IFK, and you've got the junior leagues, and there's 12 teams in the league. So on any given night, you could have half the league playing in Helsinki. Hämeenlinna is 45 minutes, Turku is an hour and a half. So now you're up to 10, like you can almost see the whole league commuting just from Helsinki. And then you've got the junior and the developing players. And if you like hockey, what a great place to go. So I just got a flat and I would commute back and forth. I was single and it was wonderful. It was like a hockey dream world.
So you're going back and forth between Helsinki and what, Chicago?
No, at that point I was when we first started, I was in Enfield, Connecticut, which is a town right outside Springfield.
Nice.
Yeah.
So how do you think your experience, living for a bit and playing and working in Finland has helped you on your path to becoming an NHL GM? And was that always your goal? Did you always, as you were an agent, were you satisfied, happy being an agent? Would you have stayed one? What was your career path? What was your goal?
I had always wanted to be a GM since I was a little boy. I had the privilege of being a bat boy for the Milwaukee Brewers, and the general manager was a guy named Harry Dalton, who kind of took a shine to me and was very kind, very helpful to me, and gave me lots of advice, lots of guidance, and sort of pushed me to say, well, why don't you be a baseball GM if you can't be a ball player? I think hockey is my passion. Well, then go be a hockey GM. And you need to scouting, you need to focus on, you need to watch the players, you need to learn. So all these things. And in high school, the kids used to joke that, Bill Zito, he wanted to be Harry Dalton. That was my goal in life. And then, after college, I wanted to be in hockey, but I had college loans to pay off, and I had some opportunity costs in my, I guess what you would characterize opportunities in the legal community in Wall Street. So it just sort of fell into place. And then when I became an agent, I really did initially think I would do it for a short period of time as a path to break into the hockey world on the team side. And then as it just, as you guys can appreciate, it grows exponentially. And it just kept growing and growing, and we were enjoying it. And I was learning every day, and I was really enjoying the relationships. I was still pretty young and similar, close enough in age to the clients where the relationships were really tight. But when Jarmo gave me the chance to move over, it was the right time for me to move on to Columbus. And I cherish those days on the agent side as much as I love the days here.
What was the biggest advantage being an agent that helped you being a GM?
It's one that I think a lot of agents would tell you or would agree with me. When you're an agent, if you are so interested or if you're predisposed to this type of inquiry, you're almost going to what I've referenced this a number of times as hockey or NHL university, because you can learn about individual organizations through and via the experiences of your clients. So if you have guys in the minors and you interact and you're close and you pay attention, you know how they're developed, you know how they communicate with the minor league coaches, you watch the games, you know what the systems are, you know what their off ice is, you know how they feed them, you know what they feed them, you know their travel score, like all of those little nuanced day-to-day activities that are so important on the development side, you know, via your experience with your clients. On the NHL side, you interact with the general managers and you get to know them, you negotiate with them. Through your NHL clients, you now have the same set of experiences and information streams. And you get it from 32 different teams. So there's a wealth of information across the board that you can, you know, digest and hold on to and catalog and just save for future reference. So I think that experience and that ability to really understand the inner workings and the hows and whys has helped me quite a bit.
Bill, how serious is the art of negotiation contracts? Do you feel, from an agent perspective, to a GM or assistant GM who's ever in charge? Each franchise has a little bit different pecking order as far as who's negotiating contracts. Is it, you know, is negotiating contracts maybe easier than facilitating trades ultimately, you find, or is there an art for both that you need a different skill set?
It's a tough one, and I think any professional whose career is sort of negotiation based on a daily basis would look at pro sports and kind of roll their eyes. Think, you know, I'm negotiating contracts for soybeans all day, every day for British Petroleum. That's what I do. And the smallest contract I've done is 200 million a day, right? And so the scope, the magnitude, the difficulty, or even, you know, look at some of the political negotiations that take place. I am literally I'm trying to save someone's life and get them out of a foreign prison.
Yeah.
They want a murderer, right? A sentenced murderer from our country to be released and free to go ostensibly to do it again. But I'm a little bit worried about an entry-level contract for Joe Smith. So, you know, the scope and magnitude of these types of decisions. So I'm not sure. Practically in the hockey world, it's been difficult to do trades for lots of reasons. Cap, both the current salary, your ability to retain, your ability to retain the player long term. There's all kinds of reasons. I mean, I think we were in February and there were like 2 trades or something this year. So I would have to say it's probably easier to do the contracts than the trades.
All right, Bill, we really appreciate your time. We're going to wrap up in a second here. One final one from me. I mentioned the trade deadline. We've talked about the process, how difficult it can be to make trades at times. You know, as I mentioned, you went for it, trading for Claude Giroux, trading for, you know, some help on your blue line. When you take a look at the end of, you know, the end result, and you talked about how we won one playoff round, not nearly good enough. What did you learn going through that process? And now you're looking at, you know, you've got your draft board in your room and you're short on first round picks for the next number of years. You know, you went through a process where you're trying to recoup picks at the end of the deadline, you know, the Max Domi trade, for instance, helping facilitate that. What's that like, balancing all of it? And what did you learn through the process?
My learning curve on this type of acquisition probably started with Duchesne when I was in Columbus. I don't know if you guys remember that one, but it was just, they're all in, blah, blah, blah. We had elected to keep Panarin to rent him to ourselves, that type of thing at the time. Probably the lessons learned from this past deadline, those classes have yet to be taught. We'll see now what the impact is. Strategically, you make decisions and think, do I have an answer for this particular element of the equation? We think we do, but we don't know. So if we're right, well, then we learn that, yeah, we were right. And you know what, that philosophy, that process or that way of thinking was accurate. If it doesn't work out, why didn't it work out? Was it the thinking? Was it just a one-off? Did a guy, broke his leg? Well, what can I tell you? Or was there a flaw there and you made an error in the way you reasoned it? So I think it's a little premature for me, and I don't think the success or failure of us to continue to move forward in the playoffs is necessarily the only factor that we can look at.
Awesome, Bill. We always like to end with a little fun, little rapid fire. The only rule is you have to answer the question. All right, so here we go. What years were you a bat boy with the Brewers?
81 to 83, and then sort of some part-time, in the summers you'd come help out.
Gee, those are like the prime years of the Brewers, man. That's when you went to the to World Series. So who was your favorite player and why?
I got to be honest with you. It was they were so kind to me. I am almost going to start crying when I think about what those guys did for me and how collectively that group of men treated all of us, all the kids in the clubhouse. But those guys would go to my high school games. They would make sure I did my homework. Awesome. When I had, not to get into this huge story, but I had an extra year of high school in the Boston area. And I had been accepted the day the Brewers were playing in Fenway. I was going to the game that afternoon to visit the guys, and I had opened up and I had been accepted to Harvard that day. And of course I told Mr. Dalton, and I came in the room and they had a hip hip hooray. And it was just the collective kindness and appreciation. It was like every guy in that group understood what it was like to be a kid working there.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. And did you ever take BP? Did you take BP? What kind of hitter were you?
It was pretty good, but you need to understand that we joke about it all the time. Harvey Keene was the manager who had been a hitting coach. He had led the American League in hitting when he played.
Yes.
And he was the manager. So we would go early and get our stuff done. And you do the laundry, you do the shoes and everything. We get there like before the laundry was even ready to do, we'd be cleaning. So as soon as we could as soon as the grounds crew was done, we could get out and set up BP and go out, and he'd help us. And no, lower your hands and raise them. Remember, that was the era of like Willie Starr was doing this, and John Walkenfuss was doing this, and you had all these hokey, crazy, and Jim Rice was coming in with Boston, and Yaz was still playing. You could talk hitting, and everybody was available. It wasn't like you just walk over to hey, Yaz, can I ask you something? And it was like, I can't make it up. It was like heaven for a baseball fan. So every single day we were out there. And then after we hit, we were smart. We made sure we took care of like the guys who were pitching BP. Their laundry was pristine. Their shoes would shine. And these weren't like major league ball players. These were like fill-ins or like, coaches down the line. Then we'd go out and we'd shag balls. And it was awesome.
So what's the backstory? How did you become a bat boy?
I switched high schools after my freshman year. And when I went to the new high school, Harry's daughters were in my class. And they were also new students. And we kind of became initial pals. And then I kept hounding them. I want to meet your dad. And then I met their dad, Mr. Dalton. I want to be a bat boy. He said, you have to be 16. No, I don't. I can do it right now. No, by law, you have to be 16. Then I suspect they put him up to it. But on my 16th birthday, then he called me and said, you want to be a bat boy?
Wow. And how did you pick Yale over Harvard?
My teachers and two things. My teachers and Tim Taylor was the coach. And Tim Taylor's a guy, he passed away years ago, but he's just done so much for me, and was a reason.
Bill, you mentioned earlier how, as an agent, you were joking about, the highs of the wins and losses. What about as a bat boy, the highs and the wins and losses during those 3 years for Milwaukee Brewers? Like, what was your emotion at that point? Could you stay calm? Like, I can just imagine though, because you feel that much part of the team when you're a bat boy.
I mean, you guys, seriously, it should be a book or a 30 for 30 type thing, that particular group. But it was really interesting because when the players would come in with this, of course you have pitchers getting pulled or guys striking out and they won 90 some games. I mean, it was a good team, right?
Yeah.
So they would inevitably come up to the locker room. And some of the guys were going right for a cigarette, right? Because we had beers, right? We had to ice the beer and put it out, right? We had cigarettes and chew. But it was almost as if the clubbies were the first point of contact of service or relief or a figurative hug. So when the pitcher came, he was going to the trainer to get ice for his shoulder, right? So I'd make sure the ice is ready. And then depending on who it was, what kind of beer they liked, or Gatorade or water, you'd bring it there. And so there was that level of appreciation. I mean, I remember when they didn't win when they lost Game 7, I was crying and I was all embarrassed. I'm not crying, I have allergies. But we learned so, like Robin Yount was
Yes.
always the same guy. Always. Didn't matter. He never treated anyone, never high, never low, never, always. And there's so many lessons from that group that every single day I use a lesson I learned from those guys.
So did part of you cheer for the Blue Jays when Molitor won the World Series?
Yeah. He was another guy. He came to my school once. Just, I can't tell you, I can't impress upon you guys enough how well they treated us and the little things they did to make us feel like we mattered when we were just a bunch of high school kids, like it.
Do you ensure that your organization, your players do the same to people in your organization because of that?
It's going to sound like it's disingenuous, but it's true. I don't have to. One of the blessings that we have is with our group is to a man, they are a gracious, considerate, really kind lot. And I know that I have the title of general manager so that if I bring, for example, 20 minutes before the game, some kid in the hallway and sneak him in the locker room, and the guys are kind to him, well, of course they're going to be, right? But it's not. It's because they're kind. And we're really blessed with a high character group of men who appreciate it, who are, at any point when we have an optional skate and the staff guys bring the players and some of the staff bring the children out to skate at the other end. They're always involving everybody. It's a really nice group.
Lastly, Bill, after your first playoff win, a series win, or your cup win, or maybe even a big trade, what is your cocktail of choice?
Sassicaia.
Ooh, I like it. Bill, I really appreciate your authenticity today. Thanks so much for joining us on the Rundown. GM of the Florida Panthers, Bill Zito. And you know what, Frank, it's rare to see big trades like that. So it was good to get kind of into his head on that a little bit. And
he's a really interesting guy too.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how the Panthers do this coming season. They obviously still have a boatload of talent. There's no question.
No doubt.
Now let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk for Buy or Sell.
Yes, it's another edition of Buy or Sell delivered by our friends at DoorDash. Ding dong. Let's dig into things here with the one team that made some news over the last week you guys didn't touch on in the open, and that's the Boston Bruins. I know it was kind of expected that, Krejci and Bergeron would be back. But now that it's official and we know they'll be in the lineup, they're without Marchand and McAvoy for a bit, the Boston Bruins have a blank % chance of making the playoffs next season. Frank?
55.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, what a sick deal. You look at value for Patrice Bergeron.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's great value for the Boston Bruins. But man, they got some key injuries. So can they overcome those injuries? Yeah, you know what? I like Frank's number, but I'm gonna go a little bit of prices right here. I'm gonna say like 52%.
52%.
Oh wow. So I was gonna say, did you think I was low? Because the big reason I gave the number I did was because I'm thinking they're going to be losing more points to other teams further down in their division, like Ottawa this year, like Buffalo. I think Buffalo is going to be a little bit better. Like Detroit, like those teams should be better. And you're looking at a spot where can you hang on?
Yeah. It's like the gap between Boston and Buffalo this year was, not that it's a good idea for me to do math, it was 32 points. I can guarantee you it's not going to be 32 points this year, right?
That's the thing. So how many points get chipped away by those other teams?
Yeah.
Especially while they're coalescing from their injuries.
You guys talked about Jonathan Huberdeau off the jump and that big ticket he got. He had 115 points last season in 80 games. Assuming he plays 82 games or close to it, how many points will Jonathan Huberdeau get next season? Jason?
Yeah, I look at his point totals. I think, offense is up in the NHL, so that definitely plays a factor. He's going to be on the number 1 power play in Calgary. I see him kind of slotting in, replacing, pick your poison, Gaudreau or Tkachuk. He'll obviously be on the top line. I'm going to say he scores 90 to 95.
All right. Frank?
Man, we're thinking alike today. I was going to say 98 points.
Not quite at the 100 mark, but close enough probably.
Yeah.
Interesting article over at TSN. Travis Yost has kind of been ranking teams based on, he's been doing tier lists based on center, left wing, right wing. And he had 3 teams who he considered to be elite down the middle. They were Edmonton, Florida, and the Toronto Maple Leafs. My question to you, the team in the NHL who is the deepest at center is blank. Frank?
Deepest meaning 1 to 4, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day. I like those 3 teams for all the reasons you mentioned, and they don't quite have that top end, McDavid, Draisaitl sort of skill, but 1 to 4, I actually really like. I like the Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, they're in a spot where they're probably right in that next tier down, Point, Cirelli, Paul, and Belmar. I don't know. I'd be hard to bet against that group.
Well, here's the thing is, what about Ross Colton? Like Ross Colton took almost 600 faceoffs last year.
Ross Colton's
goals,
he's a great example.
Like if he's considered a center, because I was looking at, like, if you go by the NHL website of guys who are listed at center, some of them aren't actually centers anymore. They're moonlighting as centers, right?
Yeah.
I was just looking at the way they wrapped up the season because Paul ended up playing center and Colton was on the wing on that line.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
But that's if you're looking outside of those top 3, that's the next team on my list, I think.
Yeah.
And in fact, I would consider putting them right in line with the Leafs.
Yeah, see, it all depends. Like Ryan Nugent-Hopkins played center for maybe half the time last year. He's not a great faceoff guy, but he's a really good third line center. So if Nugent-Hopkins is at center, then it's hard to beat Edmonton because they have McDavid's better than any center in the league. So if McDavid cancels out Matthews, well, then Draisaitl's the next, right? Like he's the best number 2 center if you look on any team in the league. So if you have the best 1 and 2, but your number 4 is meh, does it really matter? Because your 1, 2, and 3 play so much. So yeah, it would still be hard for me to pick anybody because of Draisaitl and McDavid. Obviously, Tavares and Matthews are super close, and Barkov and Florida. I might actually lean to Florida because of the depth that they have, and Barkov is like really good, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's not McDavid, but it's not a massive gap between him and McDavid. Anton Lundell is, man, he is,
Really
I
good.
think he's underrated. He is a solid, and he was a rookie. I think he's only getting better, right? Sam Bennett, they got lots of guys that can play the middle there. Luostarinen. So I might actually go with Florida if we're doing depth overall, but obviously top end, it's Edmonton.
One team that would be interesting to come back and have this conversation about a year from now is, what if Quentin Byfield takes a step forward and the Kings are suddenly going Kopitar, Deneau, Byfield down the middle? I mean, you want to talk about being in a division where you got to go up against the McDavid and Draisaitl's. If that's your trio down the middle, you're probably set up for success pretty nicely in LA.
And you know what? Blake Lizotte, underrated as a center iceman in LA. Like, he is just, he's a little spit disturber that he adds a lot.
Spit disturber. I've never heard that.
Yeah,
I
we're
usually
keeping it
say
clean.
shift disturber.
Well, that's a good one too.
Yeah. Let's wrap this up with our Montana's bonus question. Like Jason said earlier, all you can eat Rib Fest is on from now until September 12th. I had a chance to go out last week and enjoy some with the Real Life podcast guys, and they were fantastic. It's kind of a bit of a slow sports run right now, so I'm going to ask you guys this for the bonus question. What show are you binging right now, Frank?
I'm not binging anything, and I'm looking for something. I don't have anything in my queue, and I'm sort of disappointed by that. I would love something to watch right now. I need a suggestion.
I'm with you, man. There's not any new summer shows. I've watched quite a few shows, but I'm kind of tapped out. I also trying to limit myself in my TV viewing. So I've been watching movies and like breaking them up lately into an hour a night, watching different movies. But I actually did just download Unrivaled, so I'm looking forward to watching that this week.
That was good. I've been watching a lot of baseball.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm a big baseball guy. How about this for a summer show?
Hey, dude, what about a baseball? Are you kidding me, man? Aaron Judge. How can we not talk about that guy? That's unbelievable what he's
I actually
doing.
went to Yankee Stadium last week. I'm doing a little ballpark tour, trying to get to all 32 with my son. And so we've knocked off a few in the last few weeks. I did Baltimore. I did the Yankees.
Did Judge hit a dinger when you were there? It's like he's hitting one every game.
He did not. They got throttled by the Mariners. They were down 6 runs in the first half of the first.
Oh, that's not good. But Aaron Judge, man, like I was looking at those stats on where he's at right now. It's like one of the greatest home run seasons we've ever seen. And man, he just pounds the ball.
At the end of the month, I think we're going to do a 3-day swing. We're going to get Cubs at Wrigley, followed by Cubs at Milwaukee, and then end it with White Sox, Diamondbacks. So we're going to do 3 parks in 3 days, cross 3 off the list.
Oof, that's not bad. That's
fun.
Good living. Good living. All right. That's going to be a wrap for Fill in the Blank, guys. As always, delivered by our friends at DoorDash. Ding dong.
So there we go. Busy episode, Frank. Busy episode. And we will enjoy Italy. We will talk to you from Italy next week.
Thanks for listening to the DFO Rundown with Saravalli and Gregor. Keep it locked on dailyfaceoff.com and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts from to never miss an episode. Delivered by DoorDash.